It's 3 in the morning and you're there, lying in your bed, body perfectly still. But inside it's as if 1,000 thoughts are racing wildly through a labyrinth with no exit. Your muscles are relaxed, your breathing is calm, but something inside you screams silently that nothing makes sense anymore. It's that strange sensation of living a life that doesn't seem yours, as if you were an actor playing a role you never chose, in a play you never quite understood. You look at the ceiling and wonder when everything became so mechanical, so empty, so distant from what you once dreamed for yourself. Franz Kafka knew intimately this silent agony, this invisible prison where the body functions perfectly, but the soul struggles against bars that no one else can see. Today, we're going to explore together this profoundly human experience of being physically present but existentially absent, and discover how this understanding can be the first step toward genuine transformation. If you've made it this far, you probably recognize something familiar in these words, and that touches me deeply, because I know it's not easy to admit that something isn't right when everything appears to be functioning on the outside. This channel exists exactly for people like you, who feel this profound disconnection but often can't find words to express what's really happening inside. Here, you're not alone in this journey of self-knowledge and transformation. Subscribe now, because we're going to continue exploring these intimate territories of human experience with the depth and care they deserve, and also leave your like, so this content can reach other people who might be going through exactly what you went through or are going through right now. The human condition that Kafka described with such precision is this strange dichotomy between the biological machine we are and the conscious being we inhabit. Imagine a worker who every day wakes up at the same time, drinks the same coffee, takes the same transportation, sits at the same desk, performs the same tasks, returns home, watches the same programs, and goes to sleep at the same time. Physically, everything works like Swiss clockwork. The body moves, muscles respond, reflexes are intact, digestion happens, sleep comes at the right time. But inside, something screams an inconvenient truth. This isn't living, it's just survival disguised as normalcy. It's as if there were two people coexisting in the same body, one who executes the basic functions of existence and another who observes all this with a growing sense of unreality. Kafka understood that this alienation isn't a personal defect, but an inherent characteristic of the modern human condition. We are creatures capable of dreaming of infinities while trapped in finite routines. We can imagine extraordinary lives while executing ordinary tasks. We can feel the vastness of the universe within us while navigating small and predictable spaces. This constant tension between what we're capable of imagining and what our daily reality offers creates a specific form of suffering that is both universal and profoundly solitary. Think about how you feel when you're executing automatic activities, brushing your teeth, driving a familiar route, shopping at the supermarket. There are moments when you seem to be watching your own life from the outside, as if you were a spectator of your own existence. Your body is there, functioning perfectly, but you have the sensation of being disconnected, as if you were operating on autopilot, while your true essence remains asleep or imprisoned somewhere inaccessible. And you, have you experienced this sensation of living a life that doesn't seem completely yours? Those moments when you stop and wonder how you got to where you are, without being able to remember having consciously chosen this path. If you're feeling this now, leave in the comments, "My body is here, but I got lost along the way." Your courage in recognizing this might be exactly what another person needs to see to understand they're not alone in this experience that's so common yet so isolating. Kafka's genius was in perceiving that this disconnection isn't accidental, but arises from a deeper structure of human existence. We live in societies that value productivity, efficiency, functionality. but rarely ask about meaning, authenticity, genuine connection with our deepest purposes. We're rewarded for functioning well, not necessarily for living well, and this difference is crucial for understanding why so many people feel physically healthy but spiritually exhausted. Imagine a tree growing in a pot that's too small. Externally, it might appear healthy, its leaves might be green, its branches might be firm, but its roots are compressed, struggling for space to expand naturally. The tree doesn't die, but it doesn't thrive either. It exists in a state of constant containment, functioning within the limits imposed by the environment, but always with the latent sensation that something essential is being denied. This is a perfect metaphor for the human condition that Kafka explored. We are infinite beings trying to prosper in finite structures. Modern society, with all its demands and expectations, often functions like that pot that's too small. It gives us specific forms of existing, well-defined roles to play, approved paths to follow, and while these structures offer security and predictability, they can also become invisible prisons that keep our true nature compressed and repressed. The result is exactly what the title suggests. Our bodies function, rest, recover, but our life, our most authentic essence, remains suffocated. Kafka had an acute perception of how human systems, whether bureaucratic, social, or familial, can become Kafkaesque labyrinths where we lose sight not only of where we're going, but of who we really are. It's as if we woke up one day and discovered we'd become characters in a story someone else wrote, following a script we never read completely, playing a role we never consciously auditioned for. The sensation that the body rests but life can't take it anymore arises from this growing perception of incongruence between our essential nature and the external demands we accept as inevitable. It's the painful recognition that we manage to meet all the practical expectations of existence, sleeping enough, eating adequately, fulfilling responsibilities, maintaining functional relationships, but still feel a persistent emptiness, a fatigue that isn't physical, but existential. This existential fatigue doesn't respond to conventional remedies. You can sleep 8 hours a night and still wake up tired. You can take vacations and return with the same sensation of disconnection. You can change jobs, relationships, cities, and discover that the feeling of living a life that isn't completely yours traveled along with you. This happens because the problem isn't in external circumstances, but in the relationship we establish with ourselves and with our own authenticity. Kafka understood that this isn't a pathological condition that needs to be cured, but a characteristic of human consciousness that needs to be understood and integrated. We are the only animals capable of questioning our own existence, of feeling displaced in our own life, of experiencing this specific form of suffering that comes from the capacity to imagine alternatives to our current reality. And while this can be painful, it's also precisely what makes us human. The key to dealing with this condition isn't in eliminating it, but in developing a more conscious and compassionate relationship with it. Recognizing that the sensation of disconnection isn't a personal defect, but a signal that something in us is asking for attention, recognition, more authentic expression. It's as if our soul was sending signals that we need more space to breathe, more freedom to explore who we really are beyond the roles we play. The first step of this journey is developing the courage to admit that something isn't right, even when everything appears to be functioning adequately on the outside. It's honoring the internal experience of disconnection as valuable information, not as a problem to be quickly solved. When we begin to listen to these signals with curiosity instead of judgment, we open space for a deeper investigation about what our life is really asking of us. Kafka invites us to consider that perhaps the suffering of disconnection is actually a call for a more authentic life, as if our deepest nature were constantly inviting us to question, to explore, to experiment with forms of existing that are more aligned with who we really are. But this requires a specific courage, the courage to disappoint external expectations in favor of internal integrity. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, most connected with yourself. They probably weren't moments when you were perfectly fulfilling all social expectations, but moments when you managed to access something more genuine, more spontaneous, more truthful within you. Maybe it was during a deep conversation with a friend, or while immersed in a creative activity, or in contact with nature, or in moments of contemplative solitude. These moments of genuine connection are clues about what our life is really asking of us. They're glimpses of a more authentic existence that remains available, but often gets obscured by daily demands and expectations we've internalized about how we should be or live. The question isn't to completely abandon the practical responsibilities of life, but to find ways to integrate more authenticity within existing structures. This might mean creating small spaces of freedom within established routines, moments of conscious pause, where you allow yourself to simply exist without having to produce, perform, or meet expectations. It might mean seeking activities or relationships that nourish aspects of yourself that may have remained dormant. It might mean developing contemplative practices that help you maintain contact with your internal experience, even amid external demands. Kafkaesque wisdom reminds us that the experience of alienation can also be a portal to a deeper understanding of the human condition. When we recognize that this disconnection is an experience shared by millions of people, we stop seeing it as an individual problem and begin to understand it as a characteristic of human consciousness that deserves compassion and careful investigation. There's something profoundly liberating in recognizing that the sensation of living a life that isn't completely ours isn't a personal defect, but a natural response to structures and expectations that often don't take our deeper nature into account. When we stop fighting against this experience and begin to listen to it with curiosity, we discover it contains valuable information about what our life really needs to flourish. The body that rests but the life that can't take it anymore is telling us it's time to question some basic premises about how we're living. Maybe it's time to investigate whether the values we're prioritizing really reflect what's most important to us. Maybe it's time to examine whether the relationships we maintain are nourishing our authenticity or keeping us trapped in patterns that no longer serve. Maybe it's time to consider whether the activities that occupy most of our time are aligned with our deepest purposes. This investigation doesn't need to lead to dramatic or disruptive changes. Sometimes the most powerful transformation happens through subtle adjustments in how we relate to ourselves and our experience. It can be as simple as beginning to notice moments of disconnection with curiosity instead of judgment, or creating small daily rituals that honor aspects of yourself that may have been neglected. The journey back to authenticity is unique for each person, but always involves a gradual return to internal listening. It's as if we needed to relearn the language of our own soul, which often speaks through sensations, intuitions, longings that don't easily translate into words or rational plans. Kafka invites us to honor this more subtle language as a source of wisdom that complements but doesn't replace our capacity for logical reasoning. When we begin to integrate these two forms of knowledge, practical rationality and intuitive wisdom, we discover it's possible to navigate the demands of modern life without losing contact with our most authentic nature. It's not about choosing between responsibility and authenticity, but about finding creative ways to honor both within the complexity of contemporary human existence. The final invitation Kafka offers us is to embrace the fundamental strangeness of human existence with a mixture of humor, compassion, and curiosity, to recognize that all of us are, in a way, strangers in our own life, trying to decipher an instruction manual no one gave us, playing roles we learned through imitation and trial and error. And that there's a peculiar beauty in this shared condition of existential perplexity. When you manage to look at your own experience of disconnection with this broader perspective, you'll probably discover that the feeling of isolation will begin to dissolve. You're not alone in this experience of feeling that the body rests, but life can't take it anymore. Millions of people around the world are navigating this same tension between external functioning and internal restlessness, seeking ways to live with more authenticity within available structures. And perhaps it's exactly this shared search for a more genuine existence that connects us to each other in deeper ways than conventional social roles allow. Perhaps it's in honesty about our own vulnerability and confusion that we find the threads that weave true human community. And perhaps it's in the courage to continue questioning, exploring, and experimenting with new ways of being that we'll discover that life, however strange and disconcerting it may be, still holds possibilities for beauty and meaning that we can't even imagine from where we are now.